to our third edition of This Week in the Pentecostal Evangel. My name is Lisa Millen, and I'm the church history professor here at the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. And I'm in this beautiful chapel, the William Seymour Chapel at the seminary, with my colleagues today.
I'm Jason Sprinkle. I work at the Burnett Center for Biblical Preaching. We produce resources for pastors.
My name is Bob Eby, and I'm a professor here of Biblical Exposition at the seminary.
And I'm Rick Wadholm, Associate Professor of Old Testament here at the seminary.
Today we're looking at the Pentecostal Evangel from January 23rd, the week of January 23rd, 1932. So we're jumping back in time a little bit. And at this time, we know that Stanley Frodsham was the editor and E.S. Williams is our superintendent.
Two big names in fellowship's history.
Things
Important
are
names.
taking off, aren't they?
You can tell just by looking at the cover.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can see the development and the growth in the 18 years from when they started. I mean, there's a picture on the front cover.
Yes.
I love that.
And the tagline, the whole gospel for the whole world.
There is nothing more AG than
That's
that
right.
line right there. The whole gospel to the whole world.
Yeah. Wonderful. So what did you guys pick out that you enjoyed about this week's?
Well, if we're talking about the tagline, I've got to point out they misspelled the word price on the front page. They forgot the letter I.
Well, maybe
because there's
stuck.
no I in Assemblies of God.
That's right.
There's just we.
Notice that it's 5 cents now.
It's gone
5
up.
cents,
It's gone
a
up.
little bit.
I mean, that almost
Yep.
got you a year's worth.
That's right. It's a
1915.
$2 for the whole year's worth.
This is edition 932.
Wow.
Even by 1932, look at the number of
That's incredible.
editions there already were out there in the fellowship.
And you know, isn't that wonderful that we have this history? I'm so glad that we recorded these, that we kept these, and we can go back and look at what did it mean to be Assemblies of God in 1932. What a wonderful record we have.
You know, and by and large, we weren't producing monographs and books that much, right? This was our theology. This is where we wrote our theology. If we wrote theology, we were generally writing in something like the Pentecostal
we
Evangel.
did have
We had a
people
few tips.
writing.
I'm not saying there
Yes.
were none, but I would say nothing paralleled the output of 932.
Certainly not the reach of this.
Yes.
Yes,
It was
in everybody's church.
Yeah.
Yes, in everybody's hand. You'd get it when you walked
That's
into the
right.
sanctuary. You got the bulletin and the
When
evangel.
you were greeted
Yes.
at the door.
Yes.
And again, I don't feel like I'm old. I mean, people tell me I am, but I don't feel like I'm old. I started pastoring, I was lead pastor in 1997, and we were still putting out a weekly copy of the Pentecostal Evangel
Wow.
for people in our church when I was a young pastor.
For sure.
So, what did you find in this issue that jumped out to you?
Well, I can start. So there was an article by Grace Walther, and it jumped out to me because Walther Hall,
Yes.
here on Evangel University campus, recently remodeled.
Yes.
Walther Hall is named after Grace Walther,
Wow.
who I didn't know much about, and I had to do some research to make sure it was the same individual. She was a single missionary to India where she ran a girls' home for decades. Around the same time as Lillian Trasher, who became far more famous than Grace. Her article is defending the school that she's running. It's a girls' home, and she's calling it it's a factor in evangelism. And so there's, reading between the lines, she received some pushback that running these orphanages was not a proclamation of the gospel. It wasn't reaching enough people.
Wow.
Yep.
And so she's laying out the case that, hey, we have teachers who are coming to the school who end up being baptized in the Holy Spirit. The girls are being saved. Individuals from the community where the school is located are recognizing these changed lives, and they're being reached by the gospel. But what's interesting, 1932, years before we have debates on the General Council floor about whether or not we can add compassion ministries to our purposes for being, she's making a case for why compassion ministry matters to the advancement of the gospel. And it was a fascinating look at our history and why these things were being even debated way back then.
And the subtlety of the issue is really significant on the page.
Yeah.
Because She's making a defense for her ministry. And in some level, yes, making a defense of a compassion element of ministry. But the only way she can do it, and the only way she can justify it, and the only way probably she can continue to
receive funding, which is really what it's about. Yeah,
is that she says, no, this is
saved.
fundamentally
That's right.
about bringing the gospel to the world. Now, I did a little bit of checking as well. So the reason the dorm is named after her, she was one of the original dorm mothers at Evangel University. And she taught here while she was a dorm mother. And the best I can tell, I can't guarantee that it is a continuous line, but there is still a school in that town in India, an Assemblies of God school serving the people of that community. And I would bet if it's not a direct lineage, it's related in its heritage to the school Grace Walter.
And I was on the Pentecostal Flower website. Her furlough address, when she would come back to the United States on furlough, was Evangel University over a couple of years. And I found that fascinating. And this is kind of where she returned.
This is more than 20 years before Evangel starts.
Yes.
That she's on the field and then she ends up here.
It was fascinating.
All roads lead to
another thing that jumped out. So this in this edition of the Evangel, they have forthcoming meetings, evangelistic meetings that are happening around the country. And there was one in Chicago, Illinois. And so I looked and I recognized the name V.R. Jackson as the evangelist. And my grandma's uncle, so my great-great-uncle Howard Nelson, planted churches all throughout Chicagoland. And I remember in the late 1990s having a lunch with Uncle Howard and him talk, and it triggered a memory of him talking about a Jackson who had been instrumental in his faith walk. And I can't make that connection, but what it did was I went to the Flower Pentecostal Heritage website and I found Uncle Howard's application for ordination, for credential with the Assemblies of God. I found an old picture of him. I found a couple of documents that were associated with him, and I was able to get copies of those. So it's January now, but that was my Christmas present to my dad, getting those printed and then framed for him, because my dad's middle name is Nelson, which is the family name. Yeah. But it was just this unique personal connection that I had, and again, like there was that question of, was this the evangelistic service that introduced my family to Pentecost?
That's crazy.
And I don't know, but it could be, and it was just incredible.
And
it was an incredible rabbit trail.
Don't let the need for empirical evidence limit you. Just tell that story. You just tell that story because it's a good story.
Well, the same thing here. They were listing missions giving for the week, of January 2nd to the 7th. And I was able to go down here and find the church that I grew up in, Sioux Falls Gospel Tabernacle in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we gave a whopping $22.17 in world missions for that week, which might not sound a lot to us now, but in 1932, I mean, they start listing at 50 cents.
And you think about 1932 is when the country is really beginning to feel the effects of the Great Depression. Right.
Yes.
At the end of this year, 1932, Roosevelt is going to be elected on the New Deal platform, right? And so this is a lot of money at the end of the Depression.
It is a lot of money. And they list look at all of these churches who are giving. Yeah. And the top givers, Highway Mission Tabernacle, Philadelphia.
Well, you know whose church that is?
No, I don't.
That is E.S. Williams' church.
Yeah.
Oh.
When he was elected general superintendent, he was elected in the late 20s. He had to leave that church. In fact, here's the funny thing about it. He didn't want to leave. He was elected general superintendent, and for a year he refused to move to Springfield.
Wow!
And he's like, "Come on, let me just do it from here. Let me just keep pastoring my church." And they eventually said, "No, get to Springfield." But that's
I can see why. They gave $800 in missions giving that week, which the next highest church was in the 400s.
Now the question I have though is, we're showing this weekly.
Yeah.
Was that their month's giving?
Right, sure. And they happened to give it that week.
To get the award. No,
but
we would never be obsessed with awards for missions giving in the assembly. What's the matter with you?
Sorry, but it's incredibly. I was struck by how current that was. Right, so 2 weeks before this edition is published, they have that week's offerings in the evangel
Oh, yeah.
for the
Yeah.
fellowship across
And-
the nation.
And I will say, I think probably there was very much the reaction I've had listening to this conversation, I'm sure, was the response of people in 1932, because you were bragging about your church. How much did you give?
$22.
Yeah, my church is in here too, Bethel Assembly of God, Elkhart, Indiana, and we gave $772. And
Sorry, Bob.
I kind of feel like a loser.
Wow.
But you know,
In your
it
defense, you
says-
weren't born yet in
Yeah,
1932.
that's right. You would have been a big giver. These are big givings, though.
Yeah.
That's the
They
thing.
are.
And it's churches saying we participated.
Yeah.
Right. This is
Us together.
us together, and I love this. You know, I think churches felt some pride in a good way, right? We're participating, and maybe we
And
can't do it all.
that
but we
buy-in.
can-
There was, you know, we're a part of this thing bigger than us.
Right.
We are
Yes.
contributing.
Yeah.
But also, it'd be foolish for us to say there wasn't a little bit of motivation to say,
Right.
we
Pride,
can't let, hey, I know that pastor over there. I'm not
Yes.
going to let him out
Right.
give my church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there is that. We got to get on the list
Yeah.
at least, right?
And
Yeah.
frankly, this is big because this is world missions.
Right.
And at this time, I'm just thinking, how many of the pastors were receiving a salary
Right.
of almost
Right.
any
Yeah.
kind?
Right.
So you're
It's
thinking
true.
like we're committed to the world, hearing the good news of Jesus.
Yeah.
Here's the evidence. We're partners with this. Whatever's going on in the economy, whatever's going on here, we're committed to people knowing Jesus.
The whole gospel for the whole
So-
world.
And I will say,
Right.
again, throughout all of these editions of the Evangel, it's striking to me, like this is 1932. Germany is militarizing. Japan is militarizing. The Depression is ending. And the focus of this edition is on world evangelization still. It's very missional, and that's who we are, right? It's not on current events. It's not any of those tie-ins. It's the gospel must be preached.
Which is fascinating. We just talked about how immediate the data is. It's so close to the time frame. And so they're very current,
yeah.
but they're not interacting
Yeah.
with global current
It's kind of fascinating.
and even
Except-
local news.
Well, that's yes, but if we look at the front topic,
It is fulfilled
Well,
prophecies.
fulfilled
Yeah.
prophecies
That's
that
true.
prove the Bible. So we're looking at current events here too. So I guess there we've got that. I'd like to focus though on this article called "Union with Christ" by the superintendent Ernest S. Williams, and I love it because he's talking about being united with Christ,
Yeah.
and it's really a discussion about holiness and being united with Christ first in suffering. And you have to be united with Christ with Calvary before you can receive the richness of Pentecost. So if you aren't willing to suffer with Christ, then don't expect the blessings of Christ, that this is a part of it. And he talks multiple times in here about a life of crucifixion. That's what a life of holiness is, and that's what you're signing up for. And when you want to be united with Christ, you have to be united in his suffering. And I appreciate that because I think that is something that's going to get lost, right?
It does.
In the-
It does get
Yes.
diminished in its emphasis in the fellowship
Right.
over time, no doubt, no doubt. I think E.S. Williams is as much of an indispensable character
For sure.
in AG history as
For
there
sure.
is. I mean, obviously Bell's incredibly important, Flower's incredibly important, and I wouldn't minimize any of those guys, but I think E.S. Williams, when he came in,
The right man at the right time.
he was the right man.
Yeah.
We were in crisis. There were, and that's a topic for a different day. But there were a whole series of crises and instability in structure and systems and in the fellowship. And E.S. Williams is the first general superintendent that serves an extended term,
20 years, I think, right?
long time, and he brought stability, and he was, at least in the time period, he was a theologian. He was
sure.
the theologian amongst. He published that little 3-volume set
Yeah.
of Pentecostal theology. Now, again, as the time have gone on, we've seen that develop, and we look back on that as meaningful but quaint. But in the time period, he was writing stuff like
He
that
was,
with a
yes.
depth of theology that was probably unmatched in that exact moment. And he was the general superintendent.
Right.
Our general superintendent was also our theologian,
Yeah.
which was a fascinating
Yeah,
reality.
It was.
One of the things that jumped out at me was this really long book review by Frodsham.
Yeah.
Yes.
The,
He loved
Editor's
that book.
Notebook. And he just goes on and on. All these sort of like mini testimonies.
Yeah.
It's taken from a book, Mother Whitmore's Modern Miracles. I'm actually interested. I need
We
to
got to
track
get
down
that
a copy.
book.
I need to track down a copy.
Stanley loved it.
And it's pages.
Yes.
Pages spent in this issue just doing a book review.
Yeah.
And some of it's this testimonies of this Mother Whitmore and just the amazing ways the Lord was encountering her in her life and ministry, and sort of like these almost like happenstance, divine coincidences of things, provisions of funds when they were needed, where she's being asked by people like, what are you doing? What are you going to do to get this money raised? And she's like, I don't know. Like I'm just trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
And then she's got like this testimony, and it's one of these little sort of vignettes. Drunken Hattie. This is the little thing. The following is a story of
better
God's,
nicknames back then. Sorry, I'm sorry.
They did, apparently. The following is a story of God's miraculous dealings with a poor drunken woman. Mrs. Whitmore was in charge of the gospel mission at 805 3rd Avenue, New York, when one day a poor drunken girl entered the hall, took a seat near the door. She cried in a hoarse voice, "For God's sake, won't you folks please pray for me?" And then she goes on to sort of weave this testimony. They're having meetings the next night. The woman comes back, and Mrs. Whitmore is like, almost like the description is like, I couldn't even breathe as I got near her because of the stench of alcohol and just the odor and all of this. But the transformation of this young woman, and again, it's just to read Frodsham, reflecting on the testimony of Mother Whitmore, just having these constant spirit encounters.
Yeah.
Right? And like it's not space taken for individual testimonies, it's like long form testimony. Yeah. I loved it.
And Frodsham, and he is so influential in the fellowship as the editor of this evangel,
Right.
of the evangel for so many years. But Frodsham loved that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he writes the book about Smith Wigglesworth. Right. He loved this book and these stories, and he's also the one that when the break comes over the latter rain movement, he leaves to go with the latter rain movement. It was the most disruptive departure over latter rain, and Frodsham was fascinated by these stories of the extraordinary supernatural.
Yes.
He wrote it in Smith Wigglesworth. He devotes pages in this evangel, and he follows it with the latter rain movement. You made me laugh talking about Drunken Hattie. This is a good one too. In the same edition, God is not mocked. There's this a girl of 15 years living near the church has mocked the preaching of the word and made light of God until she has lost her mind. In her irrational condition, she keeps saying that she is going to burn the church down and curses everyone connected with it. It takes 3 men to hold her. The brother who built the church has been beaten by the opposers of the truth. We believe all will yet turn out for the glory of God. That's again, you just hear the voice of our fellowship in statements like that. The thing I was going to highlight, but Lisa already
Sorry, Bob.
dealt with a little bit of it, was the laying out of our missions giving in here. There was, and this was a very regular part of the Pentecostal Evangel for decades. They listed, you can go back to some earlier editions, they actually listed individuals giving. Wow. Not churches giving, individuals who sent in offerings for missions. And so they detail not only all what every church gave during that month, but then they do for that or for that week, then they also do how much was dispersed for the month. And so where it went, and you can see which fields of ministry they went into, Western China and Tibet, Central China, South China, all of these different fields. And when you total it all up, they give you the subtotal. They supported, I thought this was fascinating too, they supported non-council missionaries. Yeah. Out of HEWM. Now it was designated; it had to be designated, but $1,200 in that month. And then talks about they give to the missionaries, but then they have missionary rest homes. They gave support. Yeah. Now again, wasn't a huge priority. They gave $133 to the missionary rest home because didn't need to support that because Jesus was coming soon. That's okay, right. And then finally, though, if you take the total offerings for December, $22,250. In 2025 money, It's $500,000.
Wow.
Incredible.
Amazing.
The Assemblies of God
Yes.
in the month of December in 1931
Yeah.
gave $500,000 to missions
In the Depression.
in the early
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
of the
It-
Depression.
it's incredible.
Yeah. Again, we come back to we were deeply focused on Jesus
Yep.
is coming. We have to tell the world, and we've got to send missionaries.
And
We
sacrificial giving is a part of
In
that.
sacrificial giving, that's the suffering,
Yeah,
right? Part
right.
of the
Yep.
suffering. But a lot of times in here, not just what Jason mentioned, but several other accounts of reaching out to girls, rescuing girls
right.
who are caught in human trafficking.
Right.
And I loved that emphasis on that outreach because it's still really a part of our fellowship too.
It's what we do
right?
around the
Yes.
world.
We have a large contingency that are involved in that sort of outreach, and realizing that, people need rescuing physically as well as spiritually.
You know, I would just encourage everybody, if you're finding value in these conversations about the roots of our fellowship, subscribe,
Share.
Yes.
share these things. We know there's a community of people that grew up reading the Evangel with us. And so if you want to see it when it comes out, just like this channel and subscribe and throw a comment in. What was your experience with the Pentecostal Evangel?
Did you reading it during the sermon?
Yeah. Was your pastor noticing you're not paying attention because you were reading the Evangel?
Yeah. Where did you hide the Evangel while you were trying to read it so others wouldn't see it?
Oh, I love it.
Well, thank you for joining us in this conversation, and we look forward to talking with you next week as we explore the final week of January and the Pentecostal Evangel. So thanks again.